What if I told you Stephen Avery case is not over yet?
Okay, so this is basically a continuation of last week's episode with basically the same results. Stephen Avery is still in jail, but now he has a new high-powered lawyer who specializes in wrongful convictions. So at this point, Stephen Avery has spent over 30 years of his life in jail, potentially for 2 crimes he did not commit. We know at least one
All
here.
right, so yes. So his new lawyer is Kathleen Zellner. She is a lawyer from Chicago, Illinois, which is obviously the state next to Wisconsin, where Stephen Avery lives and where he is in jail. She specializes in appeals, and she does wrongful convictions, and she actually is undefeated in every case she takes on for wrongful conviction. She has had every single one overturned, even some that were very bleak. Looks like that the person that is in jail must have done it, but have sworn their innocence. She has done a great work. There's actually even a brand new documentary on Netflix about her and one of her latest cases of overturning a wrongful conviction. So one of Stephen Avery's friends, love interests, girlfriends, whatever you want to call her, wrote several letters to Kathleen Zellner talking about his case and that he was wrongfully imprisoned for Teresa Halbach's murder. And it wasn't until the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer Season 1 came out that Kathleen Zellner caught wind of this and saw the letters and said, well, let me take a look at this case. And right away, she noticed there was a lot of problems in the investigation, which is what we talked about in our first episode, which was obviously mostly what Season 1 is about, a lot of the problems with the investigation, especially with Manitowoc County, who is being sued by Mr. Avery in the Penny Bernstein case. They were supposed to be staying out of the Teresa Halbach murder investigation, but instead they were intricate throughout the entire investigation. So Kathleen Zellner came in and she started to work. So how the appeals process works is you can't just, if you're found guilty of any crime, whether it's robbery, assault, whatever it might be, when you're found guilty, you can't just begin the appeals process because you feel like it, because you're like, oh, this is all wrong. I got to pay, or now I got to go to jail, whatever it is. In order to have an appeal, you need to have some kind of new evidence, or be able to prove that evidence that was used against you was handled improperly, or was used wrongly, or something to that effect. So what Kathleen Zellner was doing was she quickly looked into this and found one thing that she knew she could use in the appeal. I'm going to share my screen for a second and just show a quick part of an article. And there's going to be a little bit of confusion here with this article right away, because you're going to see some dates and be like, well, those dates already passed. And I get it right here. And what it is when there's a murder investigation and it's going through the appeals process, police departments have to still keep all the evidence. They cannot turn anything over. They can't give anything back, because it's the right of the person who is convicted to be able to appeal. That's being an American citizen, it's one of your rights that you have. In the Teresa Halbach case, because her body was mutilated and burned, there's only bone fragments left. And of course, we know from our last episode that those bone fragments are very vital to convicting Stephen Avery because they're found in his backyard, in his burn pit. But what the Manitowoc County Police Department did was they actually turned over some, and I don't know what the definition of some is, if it's half, if it's a quarter, if it's whatever, turn over some of those remains to the Halbach family so they could have a service, which I totally understand. If I was in the Halbach's position, I'd want to have closure and things like that. But what the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department did was actually illegal. You cannot turn over any kind of evidence, and unfortunately, those bones are evidence during the appeals process. So the first thing that Kathleen Zellner did was she filed a motion for a retrial to retry Stephen Avery in this case because of this. And if you look down here in this article, I'll try to highlight it. She made her original briefing, and there's supposed to be a decision made by February 11th, 2020, which we know already passed. The state could not make a decision on that by that date. So they made an extension until March 27th. So they gave them about another month and a half. We obviously know we are in May now. To my knowledge, I have not heard anything about what's going on with this, if there's going to be a retrial or not. So I don't know if there's been now a second extension or what's really going on. I have
We don't know.
I have a feeling because of the quarantine and the pandemic we're going through.
We don't know what the corona has affected.
Yeah, exactly. So that might have put things on halt as well. But Kathleen Zellner is fighting for Stephen Avery, and again, she's never lost. So we'll see what happens. And one of the things that Mr. Smith did really well was talk about how in Stephen Avery's first trial, how there were some limitations of what his defense team could do. In an appeals process, it's completely different. So Kathleen Zellner does have some leeway where Buting and Strang did not in the original defense of Stephen Avery. And one thing she could do is she can actually build cases against other suspects. And one of the first people she looks into is Ryan Hilgis, which is the ex-boyfriend of Teresa Halbach and was a pseudo roommate. And I'll let Mr. Smith go more into this, and I'll stop sharing there.
So Ryan Hilgis was the ex-boyfriend of Teresa Halbach. He quite early on inserted himself into the case as a concerned ex-boyfriend, concerned friend, trying to find Teresa Halbach. His actions, mannerisms, whatever you want to say, in conjunction with Teresa's actual brother were very odd. And a lot of this sort of centers or focuses around some voicemails. So Teresa's voicemail. So Teresa has, anybody that has a cell phone, you have a voicemail. And there was some evidence that someone had erased some voicemail messages because there was some indication that the voicemail was full on one day. It wasn't full on another day. So it looked like someone had gotten into the voicemail and erased some messages. When they asked Ryan Hilgis on the stand if he knows anything about this, he basically, him and Teresa's brother were like, yeah, we basically guessed her password to see if we could go in and listen to voicemails. They did not. They denied erasing or any wrongdoing. But that's really the only thing that could have happened was if it's full on one day and then on another day you're able to leave a voicemail, either you have to, the phone company either has to enlarge the data or enlarge the capacity of the voicemail, or you had to erase some. And so there's this cloud of who erased it, what was the voicemail, why did they erase it, and there's a pretty famous scene that Mr. Bogus and myself refer to back and forth every year when we go over this case in Making a Murderer, where the judge, where it was either Buting or Strang, the Stephen Avery lawyers ask about submitting cell phone records, voicemail records, and things like that, and the judge basically says, I don't see where this has any relevance. And just that, you know, a lot of people point to, oh, you're just against law enforcement, or if you knew the Averys, or what. Look, why would a judge say that? why would a judge say, I don't see the significance of a voicemail that may or may not have been tampered with to the person who is thought to have been murdered? I just don't get that.
Yeah. So in season 2, we do see that Kathleen Zellner tries to contact Ryan Hilgis because that's one of the top suspects she's very suspicious of, and he refuses all of her interview requests, which I totally understand. That's his right. If I was in his position, I'd probably do the same exact thing if I was innocent, guilty, or in between. So we don't get to hear kind of his side. But the only thing I do want to add in that is that in season 1, we see that only when they're doing a search for Teresa Halbach, she's still missing, and they're searching all over, especially in and around the Avery property, the Avery salvage yard there, that Ryan Hilgis, who's conducting this with Teresa Halbach's brother, gives one individual a camera, believe it or not. Like the rest of them have like next to no equipment or whatever. He gives one person a camera. That's the cousin of Teresa Halbach and her daughter. And of course, they're the ones that find the RAV4 on the Avery property, which to me is just very convenient that the only ones that have the camera to be able to take any kind of documentation are the ones that find it, and they find it very quickly. Not saying that Ryan Hilgis did anything, but in season 2, Kathleen Zellner does kind of paint a picture of he had some contact with the police. There's even suggestions that there was damage to that RAV4 that wasn't there before, at least that Teresa Halbach didn't say that was there before, and that maybe Ryan Hilgis was the one that moved the car, the RAV4, to that area in the property and kind of did nudge those searchers in that direction. But, again, that's all hearsay because we don't have any concrete proof of that. So that brings us to our next suspect. I'm going to share my screen again quickly. And now we're getting to Stephen Avery's family. And I just want to say quickly that you do have to understand that where Stephen Avery's trailer was, that his sister Barb Todick lived right next door. And we do know from the first season that Brendan Dassey, the nephew, also incarcerated now for the rest of his life for his involvement in all this. His older brother, Bobby, very suspicious. Bobby Dassey said he was hunting during the time of Teresa Halbach's disappearance, was also not around during the murder or the burning of the body and things like that. And he only has one person to corroborate his corroborate his alibi, and that is Scott Todick, who is the husband of Barb Todick. So they have a weird alibi. They said at the exact time, which is something like 3:40 in the afternoon or 2:40 in the afternoon, like that, they passed each other on the road, and that they saw each other then on the road, which would not put them anywhere near the Avery properties when Teresa Halbach apparently was there with Stephen Avery. So I don't know which one you want to start with, Mr. Smith, but you can start with either Bobby or Scott. They're all yours.
Yeah, so these two individuals, so I guess I could start with Scott. Scott, who is the husband of Barb, marries into the, I guess you could call it the Avery family, by marrying Stephen's sister. At first, he, the one big thing that I remember about Scott Todick was when this all went down and the guilty verdict of Stephen Avery was announced. Scott Todick made the quote to one of the local news stations that this was the best thing in the world. Now, whether you like the guy or not, it's your wife's family member. I don't know how that's the best thing, and it's just an odd phrase to use in this kind of a situation. As far as Bobby Dassey, there was lots of evidence on his home computer that he was into some shady. Now, again, there was I don't know if you want to call it like porn or
snuff porn.
Yeah, basically killing. Lots of killing images, different types of some weird stuff.
It was like torture porn, like and snuff porn
yeah,
and stuff like that. Yeah, like abusive, rough stuff.
Which
Yeah.
in itself does not make him, having anything to do with this crime. However, it seems like somebody would have looked into that a little further. Back to Ryan Hilligus, and I'll bring him up now. The roommate of Teresa, his name was Scott Blodorn, I think. So she had a male housemate, and he did not report her missing or start making phone calls inquiring about her disappearance for literally days after her proposed, death or which is odd, which is a little odd. You live with somebody and then they don't come home for a bunch of days. Not 100% sure what you think about that person or it just, he too had some questions to be asked, and it's rumored that both Ryan Hilligus and Scott Blodorn were not asked for alibis during this time.
They were not asked for alibis. They were not suspects at all. What's even weirder, and I'm just going to say weird, I'm not going to say it points a finger at Ryan Hilligus, is that when it's found out that Teresa Halbach's remains were in that burn pit, Ryan Hilligus moves into her room in her apartment and stays with that guy for a couple months while this is all going on, which is also just, I think, odd behavior. Now, I'm not saying behavior, we talked about this in the Amanda Knox trial. I'm not saying behavior is proof of innocence or guilt, but it is a little strange to me that he moved into her apartment after she's found dead.
Another thing on Bobby Dassey, when his so Brendan Dassey, we talked about last week, for the sort of coerced confession, however you want to look at that. He's also been in jail, a younger brother of Bobby, and it's been said that Bobby has not really gone to see him, doesn't really have much to do with him. Again, it could mean a whole lot of things, but it just seems like is it guilt? Does he feel guilty that he had something to do with this? The police want to believe that she was shot in the head. Could it have been with another weapon other than Stephen Avery's that belonged to Bobby or Scott? Their alibi is, they were saying that they were hunting or they were going hunting. Both of them were hunting. That kind of a, so it's, and in this area of Wisconsin, it certainly appears that everybody was going hunting or shooting guns, and all that kind of stuff. So let's put it this way with Scott and Bobby. There were a lot of questions that needed answers to, and it didn't seem like anybody really cared whether they provided them or not.
Yeah. So just the last thing I want to say about the whole Scott and Bobby thing was that so Scott, even though he lived in the house next to Stephen's trailer with Barb and Barb's kids, he still had another residence that used to be his. I don't know if he was renting out or just using it as storage or whatever. That is the area that Bobby Dassey went hunting at. He went actually hunting right behind Scott's old house. And the reason why I want to bring that up is not that, well, it's weird that Bobby went to Scott's old house property or whatever to go hunting, was that we played a clip for you last time of good old Andy Coburn calling in a plate into dispatch. And it was just kind of odd because it almost sounded like he was reading the plate off of the plate, not reading it from scribbled down or whatever. And there was an eyewitness who called into the police department saying that they see a green RAV4 off to the side of the road. That location that was called in before the RAV4 was ever found on Stephen Avery's property was just down the road from Scott Toddick's other residence, the same area where Bobby Dassey allegedly was going hunting that day. So it was a RAV4 off on the side of the road. Doesn't mean it was Teresa Halbach's. Yes, Bobby Dassey was in that vicinity. Doesn't mean he had anything to do with it. But some more strange behavior that was just never really investigated or looked into that kind of maybe fell through the cracks that maybe should have, because either it would have proved that Stephen Avery did do it, or it would have helped us find the real killer. For the sake of time, I'm not going to show a video, but one other piece of evidence that Kathleen Zellner goes in great detail in season 2 of Making a Murderer is the blood that's found in the RAV4. She actually buys her own RAV4, same make, model, color, and everything of Teresa Halbach's, and they do a bunch of experiments. They do blood splatter in the back, which in her experiments indicates that the blood splatter doesn't show that Teresa Halbach was rolled into the back of the RAV4 and her body was moved. It actually shows that maybe she was struck by some kind of blunt object like a hammer, and those marks are making diagonal blood splatter markings like that they were from some kind of like projectile, like she was hit with a blunt object, and they were like projectile splatter marks, not dumped marks, which obviously would go downward. The other thing, which is a big one that we showed before, was by the key ignition, that they actually did an experiment where they took a Q-tip of blood, did a quick little squiggle, and first couple tries, it looked identical. So it looked more reasonable that it was done by a Q-tip than it would have been done by a bloody finger. Again, that might have been gloved or not gloved to turn the ignition. So just seeing those experiments, I think, goes a long way in making hypothesis to the innocence or guilt of Stephen Avery, but I just wanted to bring those up. Did you have any comments on those, Mr. Smith, before we move on?
Yeah, another interesting, I guess you would call it experiment that she did was there seemed to be a lot of emphasis on the fact that we found the police, that is, found a bullet in Stephen Avery's garage. And upon, I guess, inspection of around the house and the garage and the siding of the garage and all kinds of things, it sort of seemed, at least to Kathleen Zellner and her team, that they were shooting off 22s and all kinds of bullets all the time. And she did this interesting little experiment where she shot 22 through the bottom siding of the garage, and there was all kinds of bullet holes all over the place, which didn't indicate either. It indicated that was, Stephen Avery's murder complex where he was shooting all kinds of people, or they just like to plink around with guns. And when you consider the latter of we're just shooting guns, plinking around, we're going to, shoot at woodchucks or whatever on the lawn, it's not that far of a stretch to find a stray bullet somewhere in the garage, in and around the garage. Didn't necessarily have to pass through Teresa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the final thing we want to talk about, if you look at Mr. Smith's background there, the final thing we want to talk about is in season 2, they talk about this quarry area where some human bone was found. And it's presumed to be Teresa Halbach's because it was pelvis bone. It matched to other bone fragments they had. So, but there was no like skin or hair or anything on those particular sets of bones to be able to definitively say like, yes, they were Teresa Halbach's bones and they go to her skeleton. They just kind of matched up with some defections and stuff from the bones that they did have. So that would give 3 locations where Teresa Halbach's bones are found. Of course, the majority of them are found in the burn pit behind Stephen Avery's house. Some are found in a burn barrel behind the Toddick house on the Avery property. And then some are found in this quarry. Well, when they went to go interview the guy who owns the quarry, when Kathleen Zellner went to go talk to him, we found out that the actual area where they were found is actually not part of his quarry, but that's actually Manitowoc County land. And he said that there was cop cars, there was construction vehicles, there was stuff going in and out of that area all the time, and he just never really looked into it or minded, or just was like, oh, that's whatever. So the area that was kind of designed as like, oh, this is the quarry that this guy owns, in fact wasn't even his property and nothing to do with it. So that also brings up some interesting things that probably should have been looked into, but of course were not looked into. And again, you can see it on the map there where the RAV4 was found, the back entrance there behind Mr. Smith's head, and then where the quarry is. And you can even see that you could have, say, burned her body in the quarry area and then drive right along to that quarry road, the back of the salvage area, and drive right into parking the RAV4 there, and no one would be any of the wiser.
Yeah, so I think I could probably expand on that a little bit. So basically what I have is here's the auto salvage. Here's where all the cars were. Here's right here where the RAV4, it's circled where the RAV4 was found. So the idea of just kind of driving in, there's breaks in these fields, there's breaks in the quarry road. You can see sort of a makeshift roads all around here that would have been easily, you wouldn't have had to drive through the salvage lot to put that car there. In fact, it's in the back anyways, which is an indication of maybe they didn't come through this way. They probably came through somewhere in this vicinity. So here's the back entrance. You can see where there's all these roads leading into smaller roads that lead into the Avery salvage yard. Here's something that, and I told Mr. Bogus that I had sort of found something that's going to pique his interest. Right down here, which is right by the entrance to that quarry road, which you can easily go to the back part of the salvage yard, was a guy by the name of Siebert who lived there. And I don't know, have you heard of this guy?
No.
So
this is all new to me.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm getting this from Rolling Stone, so take that for what it's worth. However, this guy came forward, and it's not a case of him coming forward many, many years after, but he did come forward years after saying that, hey, I mentioned this to people and nobody seemed like they cared about it. So basically what this was Siebert is right here. He's we'll call him a neighbor to Stephen Avery. And he, as you can see, his house was right next to that quarry road. And so basically he's questioning a couple things. First of all, he's questioning the lady who found the RAV4, Pam Sturm, with an M. So her name is Pamela Sturm. And basically she found the car. She entered the salvage yard and found the car within 30 minutes. Now he's basically saying, hey, I needed a gas tank once for my trunk, and I went to the Averys. They gave me the exact row that the truck was in that I could take the gas tank. And he says they gave me the row and what kind of truck it was. And he goes, it took longer for me to find that truck than 30 minutes, even knowing the exact row and what kind of truck I was looking for. So he sort of questions the whole Pam Sturm, I found this RAV4 in less than 30 minutes. The other thing that he was saying, and this is an interest, so three revelations from this guy. The second revelation is that he says that he saw what looked like a RAV4 followed by a white Jeep. Now he said he was sitting in his yard, or he was out in his yard, and he saw what looked like a RAV4 and a white Jeep following behind going down this quarry road. Now the guy lives here. It's certainly reasonable for him to see some vehicles driving in the quarry road. He said they drove down the quarry road. About a half an hour later, just a white Jeep leaves. And this was before they found the Jeep. This would have been, let's see.
November, looks like.
Yeah, early November. He says he claimed that it was early November, days before Harlbach's car was found in the Avery lot. And he said the cars were going about 40 miles an hour. Faster than usual for that road. He said he wasn't able to see who was driving either of the vehicles, but it obviously rung a bell to him that, wait a second, it looked like a RAV4 followed by a white Jeep going in and then just a white Jeep going out, and this was before they found it. So that's the second revelation. The third is the police set up a roadblock shortly after, they're going to be searching all of this after the RAV4 was found. They set up a roadblock and they literally told this guy, hey, if you see anybody trying to get through this barricade, give us a call, let us know. So once again, he says, give us a heads up if you see anybody trying to get past the barricades. So late one night, he sees 2 Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department vehicles driving past the barricade. So he calls up, well, he actually has his daughter, Victoria. He has his daughter, Victoria, call up the Sheriff's Department. Now, here's another situation. Okay, so this is 40 minutes. As I just discovered this morning, believe it or not. This is 40 minutes of calls coming into Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department about or regarding the Halbach case. Fascinating stuff. And I'm going to play you the call from this guy's daughter, Victoria, and what they told her. So she's calling to say, hey, there's some people going back past that barricade, and they told us to, give you a heads up if we saw anybody. But there's like sheriff department cars going back through there. And so here's what it is.
Manitowoc County Sheriff, Ann speaking.
Hey, what's up?
I've got a Vicky Seabert on the line. She said her dad lives at 12408 Jambo Creek Road.
Yeah.
And he said there's a lot of cars coming down that way, going in his driveway's right next to the driveway into the pit. And he said there's somebody shining some lights around, and he's all concerned that he doesn't think they're police vehicles, that maybe there's something else going on. Are you guys in that area?
That's where they're working. I'm on
Okay.
Road.
But there are people working back there?
Out in the pits. I don't know
Oh, okay.
if they're going in that way or not. Let me check real quick.
Okay.
I'll call them. Here's probably 49 to County McMahon. Avery. Go ahead. Are you guys accessing the pits off the Campbell Creek Road through that way, or are you going on a different hole?
We've got a unit that's not quite all the way out to Campbell Creek. We believe there might have been a state trooper that might be going in that way.
10 plus. My dispatcher said something call, and they're concerned. One in the south of Campbell Creek.
10 more. Earlier we had some vehicles moving around in there, and I ended up putting a unit 40 exit there. And either super down or down and stop in and check on that officer.
I'll let them know that there's law enforcement down there then. Thanks a lot.
10 first. Sorry about that. I should have made you first.
You copy that?
Yep, I copy. Thanks, Mike.
All right, no problem.
Bye.
Now, that could mean nothing. It might mean everything. Two things I want to say about that. First of all, there's 40 minutes. If you get a chance, you could type in calls relating to Halbach case, Manitowoc Department, Sheriff's Department, and there's 40 minutes of various people. One of the calls that I listened to, a lady found a 25-year-old dead girl in an apartment complex somewhere in one of the nearby towns or cities, and they were wondering if that was Teresa Halbach because she was 25. It's a fascinating kind of a look into, number one, how the Sheriff's Department operates, how the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department operates. There's a couple, I don't know if you would call them slip of the tongues or what, but one of the dispatchers says something regarding one of the people that they're talking about how he likes his alcohol. Just so it is kind of it's worth a listen. But anyways, a couple things I want to say about that. So much for Manitowoc County not being involved, because here's a guy who was told, if you see any activity, give us a heads up. He does, and they go, we're down. We got vehicles down there. We got people down there. Why? I thought it was Calumet County that was dealing with this. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and again, I'm kind of covering it up here. I guess the guy kind of lived right down there, and had sort of a bird's eye view of everybody going in the back of what would be the salvage yard. Just a lot of here again, and I'll say it again, that I said in the first part of this. There's just too many questions. There's too many questions that are unanswered. Why is Manitowoc so involved? What are they trying? Do they not trust Calumet County? Do they think they're going to not do a good job? Just the appearance of their involvement, and it's a lot of involvement. That would be, to be honest with you, that would be enough to toss a lot of cases out in court.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A lot.
Yeah.
End of story. So I don't know, what that says, but this particular guy gave a heads up to a few people saying that there's some suspicious activity involving the RAV4, involving what this guy saw. And this is literally today. This is the first we're hearing of this.
Yeah.
This guy.
Well, I think it brings us right to our conclusion with our opinions. And my biggest opinion was that I feel like there were so many details. And if you talk to any police officers, that's what they're trying to find. They're trying to kind of cross their T's, dot their I's on the details to make sure that they can follow the evidence to who is the suspect or who is the culprit in all this. And I feel like that was just really not done here all the way through. I'm not just blaming like the police department or sheriff's department or Calumet County, Manitowoc County, but we even heard Mr. Smith talk about like even the judge kind of did a shoddy job in the trial during all this. A lot of unprofessionalism. We saw that from Ken Kratz in season 1, where he was making these long-winded announcements before there was a jury selected. That was just polluting the jury pool. They all thought that Stephen Avery was guilty before Stephen Avery was even on trial. So that just brings me to my opinion on this case. I've said it from day one. I think 100% Brendan Dassey is innocent. He was just collateral damage. They needed one last piece of evidence, which would have been his confession, to seal the fate of Stephen Avery. And I also think that Stephen Avery did not do it because he'd already been in jail for 18 years. He just got out. He's about to get a windfall of money. I know everyone you talk to around him says the money, he didn't really even care about the money, but he's about to get a windfall of money from Manitowoc County and the state. And for all intents and purposes, it seemed like he thought that Teresa Halbach was attractive when she would come and take pictures, but never in anywhere did you see that he had some kind of like sexual deviant past or like sexual assaults or things like that where he would take it to the extreme and maybe kill her. I think there was a lot of other suspects who had very suspicious backgrounds, suspicious activity, were very intricate in the investigation, like kind of like put themselves in the investigation to help the investigation go along, which I think is more suspicious than anything Stephen Avery did. The Manitowoc County Police Department would want you to think that Stephen Avery is a mastermind and had this huge plan of killing Teresa Halbach and disposing of her body. But if you take a snapshot of any part of Stephen Avery's life, he is not a mastermind of anything. He's a man of very low intelligence, does not know personal hygiene at all, and I can't imagine him being able to clean all the blood off his property to hide the murder. So too many things that do not add up to me when it comes to Stephen Avery being the suspect, which is why I think Stephen Avery is not guilty of the murder.
Yeah, I would add either, and I'll piggyback on that, too many things not adding up, or was it too many things that did add up to point to Stephen Avery? And look, you might be thinking, why are these two forensics teachers, taking the side of this dude who doesn't wear underwear?
Doesn't own underwear.
Doesn't own underwear, and sort of going against the law enforcement aspect. Look, we're teachers. We know that if one teacher does something in Texas, all of a sudden teachers are bad. We're not trying to say that all law enforcement are bad. However, in the John Bonet case, they didn't do things by the book. They didn't do things correctly. And what do we have? An unsolved case. In this particular situation, if you'd have said Manitowoc stayed out of it completely and there was no evidence of Manitowoc Sheriff's Department being involved whatsoever, and Calumet is finding all of this stuff, well, then I guess we wouldn't be able to point to many things. But when you've got Manitowoc Sheriff Department deputies and lieutenants searching houses, vehicles, everything for many, many days before they even find evidence, going in and out of barricades, and that's not even our buddy Siebert here. That's police logs where they don't sign in and don't sign out. So it's just, I guess, with teaching, with nursing, with law enforcement, with any occupation, if you don't want people to question your motives and question your professionalism, do things by the book. Don't give them a reason to question it. And we have many reasons to question this here. To be honest with you, I think probably what happened was either A, someone killed Teresa Halbach that was not Stephen Avery, but knew that the police would take a strong interest in Stephen Avery and somehow put evidence in a place where they knew that would be easy for law enforcement to find. That either A, or B, they capitalized on the sheriff's department's angst on Stephen Avery and kind of helped it along in some other fashion, whether that be putting the bones in back of his house, helping it along. Maybe they're not finding enough evidence. Do I think that the sheriff's department, intentionally did these things on purpose? Probably not, to be honest with you. I don't, but were they helped along in some fashion by one person or another that knew that they would all they want to do is get Stephen Avery? That sounds probable to me.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing we could leave you with is that, remember, she is last seen on October 31st on Halloween. Her bones are not found until November 5th in the back of Stephen Avery's house. But news reports were coming out that the Manitowoc County was at Stephen Avery's house just questioning him, just looking at him. I mean, right out the gates, I think it was like November 2nd or 3rd. So that does give somebody, a little help to be like, oh, I have this body I need to dispose of. They're already looking at this guy.
Yeah.
We'll go past some barricades and we'll work on some stuff in the back of the quarry there, and then we can just dump it all in the back of Stephen Avery's house. Again, that's just speculation, but you can look at the timeline. It could make sense.
Yep.
All right. So this has been another episode of Case by Case. This is one on Stephen Avery and Making a Murderer Season 2. And normally we have our usual ending, but we're not going to end there because we're going to have a bonus episode, which is going to be a roundtable on some Stephen Avery enthusiasts. We won't reveal who they are yet, but look forward to that coming up. We're going to just talk about both seasons and new information about the Stephen Avery case and kind of bounce it off of some other people so you're not just hearing from us. Okay?
All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next time.